Some people don't hurt you openly. They don't betray you or create drama. They simply stay too long. They take up space in your life while slowly draining your peace. You feel heavier after seeing them, quieter around them, and disconnected from yourself without knowing why. Buddhism teaches that peace is not lost suddenly. It is lost when we keep offering seats in our life to those who no longer belong there. If your soul has been asking for distance lately, this message is not telling you to hate or blame anyone. It is inviting you to choose peace without guilt and learn the art of quiet detachment. 1. Attachment is not love, it is fear wearing a mask. Buddhism teaches that attachment is one of the deepest roots of suffering because attachment does not come from love, it comes from fear. Love allows freedom, growth, and peace. Attachment demands closeness, control, and reassurance, even when something no longer feels right. Many relationships continue not because they bring joy, understanding, or support, but because they feel familiar. The mind becomes comfortable with what it already knows, even if that familiarity slowly drains the heart. We stay connected to people not because they nourish us, but because leaving feels uncomfortable and uncertain. Over time, we begin to confuse presence with importance. Just because someone has been in your life for a long time does not mean they should remain close forever. We confuse shared history with obligation, believing that past memories require us to tolerate present pain. Buddhism reminds us that life is always changing, and clinging to what has already shifted only creates inner tension. When someone repeatedly drains your energy, disturbs your peace, or keeps pulling you back into old emotional patterns, holding on is not kindness. It is fear quietly disguised as loyalty. That fear often takes many forms. Fear of being alone, fear of facing silence, fear of starting over, fear of disappointing others or being seen as selfish. Because of these fears, we stay in relationships that exhaust us, confuse us, and slowly disconnect us from ourselves. Buddhism teaches that when fear guides our choices, suffering follows. Peace cannot grow in a heart that is constantly forcing itself to stay where it no longer belongs. True compassion, in Buddhist wisdom, is not only about caring for others, it also includes caring for yourself. If a relationship requires you to constantly shrink, explain, tolerate, or betray your own inner truth, then staying is not an act of love. It is self-neglect. When you release attachment, you are not rejecting anyone, punishing anyone, or wishing harm upon anyone. You are simply choosing not to abandon your inner balance for the comfort or approval of others. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. It means you allow life to move naturally without forcing connections that no longer align with who you are becoming. Buddhism teaches that peace returns when we loosen our grip, trust change, and give ourselves permission to walk away from what quietly steals our calm. 2. Some people are lessons, not lifelong companions. Buddhism teaches that nothing enters our life by accident. Every person we meet arrives with a purpose, but that purpose is not always meant to last forever. Some people come to support us during a certain phase. Some come to challenge us. Some come to awaken us to truths we were avoiding. But the mistake we often make is believing that everyone who enters our life must stay. This belief creates suffering because it goes against the natural rhythm of life, which is constant change. Many relationships are meant to teach, not to remain. A person may show you how strong you are. Another may reveal your need for boundaries. Someone else may teach you patience, forgiveness, or self-respect. Once the lesson is learned, the connection naturally begins to fade. When we try to force it to stay, we suffer. Buddhism reminds us that clinging to completed lessons is like rereading the same page again and again, hoping the story will change. We often hold on because of memories. We remember how someone used to be, how the connection once felt, and how safe it once seemed. But people grow, paths shift, and energy changes. Holding on to the past version of someone prevents us from accepting the present truth. When a relationship no longer aligns with your peace, forcing it to continue only creates resentment, confusion, and emotional exhaustion. Letting go does not mean the relationship had no value. It means the value has already been received. Just as a teacher steps aside once the student has learned the lesson, some people step out of our lives once their role is complete. Buddhism teaches gratitude instead of attachment. You can honor what someone taught you without keeping them seated in your life forever. Nature shows us this truth clearly. Trees do not cling to fallen leaves, and seasons do not apologize for changing. When a leaf has served its time, it falls so the tree can grow again. In the same way, allowing people to leave creates space for clarity, peace, and inner growth. When you stop resisting endings, life begins to feel lighter. Some people were never meant to walk the entire journey with you. They were meant to walk beside you just long enough to help you become who you are now. When you understand this, letting go no longer feels like loss. It feels like acceptance. And acceptance is where peace begins. 3. Your energy is sacred. Not everyone deserves access. Buddhism teaches that everything is energy, including your thoughts, emotions, and attention. Every interaction you have leaves a subtle imprint on your mind and heart. Some people leave you feeling calm, present, and at ease. Others leave you feeling tired, restless, or emotionally heavy, even when nothing openly negative happened. This difference is not imaginary. It is your awareness responding to energy. When you ignore these signals, your peace slowly erodes. Many people give their energy freely because they believe it is selfish to protect it. Buddhism teaches the opposite. When you waste your energy on constant tension, emotional confusion, or unbalanced relationships, you weaken your ability to live with clarity and compassion. Your energy is sacred because it shapes your inner world. If you allow everyone unlimited access to it, you lose connection with yourself. Some relationships require you to always explain yourself, defend your feelings, or tolerate subtle disrespect. Over time, this creates inner fatigue. You may notice that your breath becomes shallow around certain people, your thoughts become noisy, and your sense of calm disappears. Buddhism teaches that the body and mind always speak the truth before words do. When your peace vanishes in someone's presence, it is a sign, not a coincidence. Protecting your energy does not mean becoming cold or distant toward everyone. It means becoming selective. It means choosing environments and people that support clarity rather than confusion. Quiet detachment is not about confrontation or blame. It is about awareness. You do not need to announce your boundaries. You live them. You step back gently. You reduce emotional exposure. You allow distance to restore balance. When you stop giving your energy to those who drain it, something changes within you. Your mind becomes quieter. Your emotions stabilize. Your presence becomes stronger. Buddhism teaches that peace grows naturally when we stop forcing ourselves to stay connected to what disturbs our inner stillness. Not everyone deserves access to your energy, and honoring that truth is an act of deep self-respect. 4. Distance is sometimes the most compassionate choice. Many people believe that love always means staying close, holding on, and enduring everything together. Buddhism teaches a quieter truth. Sometimes the most compassionate choice is not closeness, but distance. Not because there is hatred or anger, but because closeness without harmony creates suffering for both people. When a relationship repeatedly leads to misunderstanding, emotional exhaustion, or inner conflict, staying connected can slowly damage the heart. We are often taught that stepping back is selfish or unkind. Because of this belief, many people remain in relationships that drain their peace, hoping that patience alone will fix what awareness has already revealed. Buddhism teaches that wisdom is knowing when effort turns into self-harm. Compassion does not require you to sacrifice your inner balance endlessly. True compassion considers the well-being of everyone involved, including yourself. Distance can prevent harm that words can no longer heal. When conversations turn into tension, when silence feels safer than honesty, and when your presence no longer brings calm, stepping back becomes an act of care. Distance allows emotions to settle. It reduces unnecessary conflict. It gives both people space to breathe and reflect. Sometimes, staying close only deepens wounds, while distance allows them to close naturally. Buddhism also teaches non-attachment, which means allowing life to unfold without forcing outcomes. When you step back without bitterness or blame, you release the need to control how others see you or respond to you. You accept that not every connection is meant to continue in the same form. Distance becomes a way of honoring reality rather than resisting it. Choosing distance does not mean you stop wishing someone well. It means you stop placing yourself in situations that disturb your peace. You can send kindness from afar. You can forgive silently. You can release without confrontation. Quiet detachment protects your heart while allowing life to move forward naturally. In many cases, distance is not the end of love, but the end of suffering. Buddhism teaches that peace returns when we stop forcing closeness where harmony no longer exists. When you allow distance to do its work, clarity replaces confusion, and compassion becomes effortless again. 5. You do not need to be understood by everyone. One of the quietest yet most exhausting struggles in life is the desire to be understood. Many people do not realize how much of their energy is spent trying to explain themselves, justify their choices, or prove their intentions to others. Buddhism teaches that this constant need for understanding is rooted in attachment to approval. When we depend on others to validate our inner truth, we slowly lose touch with our own peace. From an early age, we are taught to seek acceptance. We learn to explain ourselves so we will not be judged, misunderstood, or rejected. Over time, this habit becomes automatic. We explain why we changed. We explain why we stepped back. We explain why something no longer feels right. But Buddhism reminds us of a simple truth. Not everyone has the awareness, emotional capacity, or perspective to understand your inner journey. Expecting understanding from everyone creates suffering where none is necessary. Many people interpret your growth through the lens of their own fears. When you become quieter, they may call you distant. When you set boundaries, they may call you selfish. When you choose peace over drama, they may say you have changed. Buddhism teaches that these judgments say more about the observer than about you. Trying to correct every misunderstanding is like chasing shadows. The more you run, the more exhausted you become. True inner stability begins when you stop explaining your soul to people who are not listening with compassion. Buddhism does not encourage isolation, but it encourages discernment. You begin to recognize who is capable of hearing you and who is committed to misunderstanding you. Silence, in many cases, is not avoidance, it is wisdom. When you stop over-explaining, your mind becomes quieter and your heart becomes lighter. There is deep freedom in realizing that peace does not require agreement. You do not need everyone to approve of your choices for those choices to be right for you. Buddhism teaches that truth is not determined by consensus. Your inner clarity matters more than external validation. When you trust yourself, the need to convince others slowly dissolves. As you release the need to be understood, you also release resentment. You stop replaying conversations in your mind. You stop wishing you had said things differently. You stop carrying the emotional weight of other people's opinions. This creates space for presence. You become more grounded in the moment rather than trapped in mental arguments that never bring peace. Buddhism teaches that silence has its own language. When your actions align with your values, explanations become unnecessary. Those who are meant to understand you will feel it without words. Those who are not meant to understand you will not, no matter how carefully you explain. Accepting this truth saves immense emotional energy. Letting go of the need to be understood does not make you cold or indifferent. It makes you free. You become less reactive and more centered. You respond instead of defending. You choose peace instead of performance. Over time, this quiet confidence changes how you move through life. You stop shrinking yourself to be digestible. You stop carrying guilt for choosing calm. Buddhism teaches that inner peace grows when we release what is unnecessary. The need to be understood by everyone is one of those unnecessary burdens. When you put it down, you discover something powerful. You were never meant to live according to other people's interpretations of you. You were meant to live in alignment with your own awareness. When you stop explaining, life becomes simpler. Your words become fewer, but your presence becomes stronger. You no longer chase understanding, you rest in truth. And in that stillness, peace finally finds you. 6. Letting go creates space for what truly aligns. Buddhism teaches that suffering often comes not from what we lack, but from what we refuse to release. The mind holds on tightly, believing that letting go will create emptiness, loneliness, or loss. But in truth, clinging fills our inner world with noise, confusion, and heaviness. When your life is crowded with people, habits, and emotional ties that no longer align with who you are becoming, there is little space left for peace to enter. Letting go is not about removing love from your life. It is about removing what blocks love from flowing freely. Many people fear emptiness because they mistake it for meaninglessness. Buddhism teaches the opposite. Emptiness is potential. It is openness. It is the quiet field where clarity, peace, and right connections naturally arise. When you release relationships that drain you, patterns that keep you stuck, or expectations that suffocate your spirit, you create space inside yourself. That space may feel unfamiliar at first. Silence can feel uncomfortable when you are used to constant emotional noise. But this silence is not punishment, it is healing. Often, people hold on because they fear that if they let go, nothing better will come. Buddhism reminds us that life cannot place something aligned into hands that are already full. When your energy is tied up in misaligned connections, you may miss the subtle opportunities that are trying to reach you. Letting go clears your vision. It allows you to recognize what feels calm instead of chaotic, nourishing instead of draining, simple instead of heavy. As you begin to release what no longer fits, you may notice a shift within yourself before anything external changes. Your breath becomes deeper, your thoughts slow down, your emotional reactions soften. This is alignment beginning from within. Buddhism teaches that outer harmony follows inner harmony. When your inner world is no longer crowded by fear, obligation, or resentment, life begins to reflect that clarity back to you. Letting go also teaches trust. Trust in impermanence, trust in timing, trust that what is meant to stay will not require force. Many relationships that truly align with your spirit do not arrive with confusion or exhaustion. They feel natural, they feel balanced, they do not require you to abandon yourself. When you create space by letting go, you allow these connections to enter without resistance. There is also a deeper lesson here. Letting go is not only about people, it is about identities, roles, and versions of yourself that no longer serve you. Buddhism teaches that clinging to an old self-image creates suffering when life calls you to evolve. When you release who you were, you allow yourself to grow into who you are becoming. This growth requires space. It requires openness. It requires the courage to sit with uncertainty without rushing to fill it. As space opens within you, you may find that solitude becomes more peaceful rather than lonely. Silence becomes restorative rather than uncomfortable. You begin to enjoy your own presence without distraction. This is alignment deepening. Buddhism teaches that when you are at ease with yourself, you no longer chase connection out of fear. You choose connection out of clarity. Over time, you may notice that what enters your life feels different. Conversations become lighter. Relationships feel more respectful. Opportunities feel more aligned. This is not coincidence. It is the natural result of making space for what truly belongs. Life responds to openness the way water responds to an empty vessel. It fills it gently, without struggle. Letting go does not mean you rush endings or force separation. Buddhism teaches patience and awareness. You let go slowly, honestly, and without hatred. You release with gratitude rather than bitterness. In doing so, you protect your heart while allowing your life to realign naturally. When you stop clinging, you stop blocking. When you stop blocking, life flows again. Letting go creates space, and in that space, what truly aligns with your peace finally finds you. 7. Peace grows when you stop forcing seats at your table. Buddhism teaches that suffering often begins when we try to control who stays, who leaves, and how life should unfold. The mind wants certainty, stability, and familiar faces at all times, even when those faces no longer bring peace. This desire to force belonging creates quiet inner conflict. We invite people to stay not because they fit our present life, but because we are afraid of what their absence might mean. Over time, this fear turns our inner world into a crowded space where peace struggles to breathe. Your life is not a meeting that requires full attendance. It is not a place where everyone who once entered must remain seated forever. Buddhism teaches that each person has their own path, timing, and purpose. When you try to keep people close out of guilt, obligation, or fear of being misunderstood, you disrupt the natural flow of life. Forcing seats at your table is not generosity, it is resistance to change. Many people stay in emotional connections long after harmony has faded because they believe letting go means failure. Buddhism teaches that letting go is not failure, it is acceptance. Acceptance that life moves in seasons, acceptance that relationships evolve or end without meaning that love was false. When you accept change, the heart softens. When you resist it, the heart tightens. Peace grows in softness, not resistance. Forcing connections often leads to silent resentment. You may smile on the outside while feeling heavy on the inside. You may remain polite while slowly disconnecting from yourself. Buddhism teaches awareness of these subtle signs. When your peace disappears around certain people, it is not a flaw in your character. It is clarity asking to be honored. Continuing to force closeness despite this awareness creates suffering that could have been avoided through gentle detachment. Stopping the act of forcing does not require confrontation or explanation. It requires honesty within yourself. You quietly stop overgiving. You stop adjusting your truth to keep others comfortable. You stop inviting people into your emotional space when they consistently disturb it. This quiet shift is powerful because it is rooted in self-respect rather than reaction. As you stop forcing seats at your table, you may experience moments of emptiness. Buddhism teaches that this emptiness is not loss, it is space. Space for rest, space for reflection, space for healing. When the noise of forced connection fades, you begin to hear your own inner voice again. You reconnect with what brings you calm, meaning, and balance. This reconnection is the foundation of lasting peace. Over time, something remarkable happens. The people who remain in your life begin to feel different. They arrive without pressure. They stay without effort. Their presence does not require explanation, performance, or emotional exhaustion. These are aligned connections. Buddhism teaches that what truly belongs does not need to be forced. It stays naturally, like a leaf resting on still water. Peace grows when you stop chasing belonging and start honoring alignment. When you stop trying to be everything for everyone, you become fully present for yourself. This presence changes how you move through life. Your reactions soften, your words become fewer, your heart becomes steadier. You no longer fear who leaves because you trust what remains. The final teaching of Buddhism is simple yet profound. Peace is not something you add to your life. It is something that appears when you remove what does not belong. When you stop forcing seats at your table, you allow life to arrange itself with wisdom and grace. Let go without noise, release without bitterness, allow distance without guilt. Not everyone needs a seat in your life, but peace always needs space to sit within you. 8. Solitude is not loneliness. It is a return to yourself. Buddhism teaches that solitude is one of the most misunderstood experiences in human life. Many people fear being alone because they associate solitude with rejection, emptiness, or failure. But solitude, when chosen consciously, is not abandonment. It is a return. It is the moment you come back to yourself after spending too long trying to belong everywhere else. When you stop forcing seats at your table, solitude often appears first, not as punishment, but as preparation. Loneliness comes from feeling unseen while surrounded by people. Solitude comes from being fully present with yourself. Buddhism reminds us that suffering does not come from being alone, but from being disconnected from our inner truth. Many people stay in draining relationships simply to avoid solitude, not realizing that constant emotional noise keeps them further from peace than silence ever could. When you enter solitude after letting go, the mind may resist at first. Old habits surface. The urge to distract yourself grows stronger. You may question your decisions. Buddhism teaches that this discomfort is not a sign that you made the wrong choice. It is a sign that the mind is detoxing from dependency. When you have relied on external validation, constant conversation, or emotional attachment, silence can feel unfamiliar. But unfamiliar does not mean unsafe. It means new. In solitude, you begin to hear yourself clearly again. Your thoughts slow. Your emotions settle. You start noticing what you actually feel instead of reacting to what others expect. Buddhism teaches that awareness grows in stillness. Without constant external influence, your inner compass recalibrates. You remember what brings you calm. You remember what excites your spirit. You remember what no longer belongs. Solitude also reveals hidden attachments. In quiet moments, you may realize how much energy you spent maintaining connections that no longer served you. You may see how often you ignored your own needs to keep others comfortable. Buddhism teaches that insight often arises not through action, but through observation. Solitude becomes a mirror, not to judge yourself, but to understand yourself with compassion. As solitude deepens, something gentle shifts. The silence stops feeling heavy and starts feeling spacious. You become comfortable sitting with your thoughts without needing to escape them. You begin to enjoy simple moments, a quiet morning, a slow walk, a deep breath. Buddhism teaches that contentment grows when we stop seeking stimulation and start appreciating presence. In this space, you also heal. Emotional wounds that were ignored finally receive attention. Patterns become clear. You forgive yourself for staying too long where you should have left earlier. You forgive others for not being able to meet you where you needed them to. Solitude allows healing without pressure, without explanation, and without performance. Buddhism does not glorify isolation, but it honors intentional solitude. When you are at peace with yourself, you no longer enter relationships out of fear. You choose connection from clarity. You stop needing people to fill emptiness, because emptiness has transformed into fullness. This fullness becomes the foundation for healthy, aligned relationships in the future. Over time, solitude teaches you self-trust. You stop questioning your intuition. You stop needing constant reassurance. You become your own safe place. When you can sit peacefully with yourself, the fear of who leaves your life disappears. You understand that your worth was never dependent on who stayed. Solitude is where you rebuild quietly. It is where you integrate lessons, restore balance, and strengthen your inner foundation. Buddhism teaches that before anything meaningful grows, the soil must rest. Solitude is that rest. It prepares you for the next season without rushing or forcing. When you stop seeing solitude as something to escape and start seeing it as something sacred, your relationship with life changes. You no longer fear being alone. You fear losing yourself again. And that shift is the beginning of deep, unshakable peace. 9. When you let go without anger, life begins to work with you. Buddhism teaches that letting go is not only about what you release, but how you release it. Many people let go with bitterness, resentment, or suppressed anger, believing that distance alone will bring peace. But when anger remains in the heart, the attachment has not truly ended. The body may move forward, but the mind stays tied to the past. True detachment does not come from cutting people off emotionally. It comes from loosening the grip gently, without hatred, without revenge, and without the need to prove anything. Anger often arises when we feel wronged, misunderstood, or unappreciated. It feels powerful at first, like protection. But Buddhism teaches that anger is a heavy emotion. It binds us to what hurt us and keeps the past alive inside the present moment. When you let go with anger, you still carry the weight of the relationship within you. When you let go with awareness, the weight dissolves. Many people replay old conversations in their minds, imagining what they should have said or how others should have acted. This mental repetition keeps suffering active. Buddhism reminds us that the past cannot be corrected through rumination. It can only be released through acceptance. Acceptance does not mean agreement. It means seeing reality clearly and choosing peace over resistance. Letting go without anger requires honesty. It means acknowledging that something no longer serves your peace without turning that realization into blame. You recognize that people act from their own conditioning, wounds, and limitations. This understanding softens the heart. When you see others as imperfect beings navigating their own confusion, forgiveness becomes possible, not as a favor to them, but as a liberation for yourself. Forgiveness in Buddhism is not forgetting what happened or allowing harm to continue. It is the decision to stop carrying emotional poison within you. Holding on to resentment is like gripping a burning coal and hoping the other person feels the pain. When you release anger, you are not excusing behavior. You are freeing your nervous system from constant tension. As you begin to let go gently, you may notice resistance within yourself. The mind may say that anger keeps you safe, or that letting go means losing power. Buddhism teaches that true power is calm clarity. When you are no longer emotionally reactive, you regain control over your inner state. You stop giving others the ability to disturb your peace long after they have left your life. Letting go without anger also changes how life responds to you. When the heart is heavy with resentment, perception becomes distorted. You may attract similar conflicts again and again, not because life is unfair, but because unresolved energy seeks expression. Buddhism teaches that inner states shape outer experience. When you release anger, your energy shifts and life meets you differently. You may notice that opportunities feel lighter, conversations feel calmer, and new relationships feel more balanced. This is not coincidence. When you stop carrying old emotional patterns, you stop projecting them onto new situations. You meet life as it is, not through the lens of past hurt. There is also deep humility in letting go without anger. It means accepting that you do not need to be right to be at peace. You do not need apologies to heal. You do not need closure conversations to move forward. Buddhism teaches that closure is an inner process, not an external event. When you stop waiting for others to give you peace, peace arrives naturally. This kind of letting go requires patience. Emotions do not disappear instantly. They soften gradually through awareness and compassion. Some days you may feel light, other days memories may return. Buddhism teaches gentle persistence. Each time anger arises, you observe it without judgment. You breathe, you allow it to pass. Over time, its grip weakens. When anger fades, something beautiful takes its place: understanding, gratitude, even compassion. You may begin to see that difficult relationships shaped your growth in ways comfort never could. This does not justify pain, but it gives it meaning. Meaning transforms suffering into wisdom. Letting go without anger also deepens your trust in life. You stop seeing endings as punishments and start seeing them as redirections. You stop asking why something happened and start asking what it taught you. Buddhism teaches that wisdom is born when we stop resisting what is and begin learning from it. As your heart becomes lighter, you may feel more present. Small moments bring joy again. Silence feels peaceful rather than empty. You laugh without guilt. You rest without anxiety. This is the natural state returning. Buddhism teaches that peace is not something you create. It is something you uncover when you remove what blocks it. In this state, you no longer fear loss. You understand that what truly belongs cannot be taken away by change. You release people, roles, and chapters with gratitude instead of grief. You bow to the lesson and walk forward unburdened. When you let go without anger, life no longer feels like something you must defend yourself against. It feels like something you can flow with. Resistance softens, trust deepens. And in that gentle surrender, life begins to work with you instead of against you. This is the art of quiet detachment, not cold, not distant, but deeply awake. When the heart is free of anger, peace becomes effortless and the path ahead becomes clear. 10. When you choose inner stillness, nothing can control you anymore. Buddhism teaches that true freedom does not come from controlling the outside world, but from mastering the inner one. Many people believe they are suffering because of other people, situations, or circumstances, but the deeper truth is this: suffering continues only when the mind remains reactive. When you finally choose inner stillness over emotional reaction, something profound happens. You stop being controlled by what others say, do, or expect. Peace stops being fragile and starts becoming stable. Most emotional pain is not created in the moment it happens. It is created in the moments after, when the mind replays, resists, and reacts. A word is spoken, a behavior disappoints you. A relationship ends. The event itself passes quickly, but the mind keeps it alive through stories, judgments, and attachment. Buddhism teaches that stillness interrupts this cycle. When the mind becomes still, the story collapses. Without the story, suffering cannot survive. Choosing stillness does not mean suppressing emotions or pretending not to feel. It means allowing emotions to arise without letting them take control. When anger appears, you observe it. When sadness arises, you sit with it. When fear visits, you breathe through it. Buddhism teaches mindful awareness, not emotional avoidance. In stillness, emotions move through you like clouds passing through the sky. They do not define you, they do not command you. As you cultivate inner stillness, you begin to notice how much power you once gave away. A single message could disturb your peace. Someone's silence could ruin your day. A small rejection could shake your confidence. Buddhism teaches that this happens when your sense of self is tied to external validation. Stillness unties that knot. You return to a place inside you that does not depend on approval, recognition, or control. Stillness also reveals truth clearly. When the mind is noisy, it reacts before understanding. When the mind is still, it sees reality as it is. You begin to recognize what truly matters and what does not. Many things that once felt urgent lose their grip. Arguments feel unnecessary. Proving yourself feels pointless. You stop reacting to every emotional trigger because you see how temporary it all is. In this state, detachment becomes natural. You do not force distance. You do not announce boundaries. You simply stop engaging with what disturbs your inner balance. Buddhism teaches that wisdom expresses itself quietly. The strongest shifts happen internally. When your reactions fade, people lose the ability to manipulate your emotions. Situations lose the power to destabilize you. You remain centered, even when life around you is uncertain. Inner stillness also transforms how you experience pain. Pain still arises, but it no longer multiplies into suffering. Buddhism makes a clear distinction between pain and suffering. Pain is unavoidable. Suffering is optional. Stillness prevents pain from turning into endless mental struggle. You feel what you feel, then you let it pass. You no longer cling to it, resist it, or identify with it. As stillness deepens, you become deeply present. You start noticing simple things again: your breath, the weight of your body, the quiet moments between thoughts. Presence grounds you in the now, where most fears lose their power. Buddhism teaches that anxiety lives in the future and regret lives in the past. Stillness brings you back to the only place peace exists, the present moment. This inner mastery changes your relationships as well. You listen more and react less. You speak less, but with greater clarity. You no longer seek emotional battles or validation. When conflict arises, you respond with calm rather than defense. This does not make you passive. It makes you unshakable. People may notice that you have changed, but they may not understand how. You are no longer available for emotional chaos. Choosing stillness also requires courage. The world rewards reaction, noise, and constant engagement. Buddhism invites you to step away from this endless stimulation, to pause, to breathe, to choose awareness over impulse. This choice may feel uncomfortable at first because stillness exposes what distraction once hid, but with time, stillness becomes your refuge. Eventually, you realize something life-changing. Nothing outside you has the power it once did. Not because life became easier, but because you became steadier. Praise does not inflate you. Criticism does not crush you. Loss does not destroy you. You move through life with a quiet strength rooted in awareness rather than control. Buddhism teaches that enlightenment is not an escape from life, but full presence within it. Inner stillness allows you to participate without being consumed. You experience joy without clinging. You experience pain without drowning. You love without attachment. You let go without anger. This is the final freedom. When you choose inner stillness, nothing can control you anymore. Not people, not circumstances, not fear, not the past. You become grounded, awake, and free. And in that freedom, life unfolds with less resistance, less suffering, and far more peace than you ever thought possible. 11. When you stop seeking permission to be at peace, life finally softens. Buddhism teaches that one of the most subtle causes of suffering is the belief that peace must be earned, approved, or allowed by others. Many people live as if they need permission to rest, permission to step back, permission to choose silence, and permission to live differently. This belief keeps the mind restless and the heart tense. As long as peace feels conditional, it remains fragile. True peace begins the moment you stop asking for permission to be whole. From a young age, we are taught to adapt. We learn to read the room, adjust our behavior, and prioritize harmony, often at the cost of inner truth. Over time, this adaptation turns into self-abandonment. We hesitate before choosing ourselves. We worry about how our calm will be perceived. We fear being labeled selfish, distant, or cold. Buddhism teaches that these fears arise when we forget our own authority over our inner world. Seeking permission shows up in many quiet ways. You wait for others to understand before you change. You stay connected to draining situations until someone agrees it is time to leave. You delay rest until responsibilities feel complete. You suppress emotions until they feel socially acceptable. Buddhism reminds us that waiting for external approval to honor inner needs creates endless delay. Life does not pause until you are ready. Peace must be chosen in real time. When you stop seeking permission, you begin to act from clarity instead of fear. You recognize that your nervous system does not need consensus to relax. Your heart does not need witnesses to heal. Your growth does not need validation to be real. This realization is deeply liberating because it returns authority to where it belongs, within you. Buddhism teaches that each person is responsible for their own mind. When you place your peace in the hands of others, you surrender that responsibility. You become reactive. Your mood rises and falls with other people's behavior. Stillness teaches you that peace is not something others give or take. It is something you allow by releasing resistance. As you stop asking for permission, your life may appear quieter from the outside. You speak less, you explain less, you react less. But internally, something expansive opens. Your thoughts slow down. Your body softens. Your breath deepens. This is not withdrawal, it is alignment. Buddhism teaches that the most powerful shifts are often invisible. You may notice that some people resist this change. They were accustomed to your availability, your emotional labor, your constant explanation. When you no longer seek permission, you no longer perform peace for others, you live it. This may feel uncomfortable at first, but Buddhism teaches that discomfort is often a sign of truth emerging. Stopping the search for permission also reshapes your relationship with guilt. Guilt thrives when you believe your needs inconvenience others. Buddhism invites compassion toward yourself. You begin to see that choosing peace does not harm others. It simply prevents you from harming yourself. You release the idea that self-sacrifice is a requirement for goodness. True kindness does not require inner violence. As this understanding deepens, you start responding instead of reacting. You do not rush to justify your choices. You trust your inner signals. When something feels heavy, you step back without drama. When something feels nourishing, you allow it without suspicion. Buddhism teaches that trust in oneself grows through listening, not through force. Life begins to soften around you when you soften toward yourself. Situations that once triggered anxiety lose intensity. Conflicts resolve more easily or dissolve without effort. This does not mean life becomes perfect. It means your relationship with life becomes gentler. You stop bracing for impact and start flowing with change. One of the most profound shifts happens in silence. When you no longer need permission, silence becomes comfortable. You do not fill it with explanations or distractions. You rest inside it. Buddhism teaches that silence is not emptiness. It is presence without interference. In silence, you reconnect with what feels true beyond thought. This state changes how you experience time. You stop rushing toward outcomes. You stop replaying the past. You inhabit the present moment more fully. Peace becomes less of a goal and more of a natural background state. Even when challenges arise, you meet them with steadiness rather than panic. Buddhism teaches that awakening is not dramatic. It is quiet recognition. The recognition that you are allowed to be at peace now, without permission, without delay, and without explanation. Nothing outside you needs to change for this peace to begin. When you stop seeking permission to be at peace, life responds differently. Opportunities align more easily. Relationships feel lighter or fall away naturally. Your intuition becomes clearer. You begin to trust the unfolding of your path instead of resisting it. This is the quiet power of inner authority, not dominance, not control, but grounded presence. When you stand firmly within yourself, you no longer need to ask the world if it is okay to rest, to release, or to be whole. Peace was never something you had to earn. It was something waiting for you to stop asking and start allowing. As you reach the end of this message, allow yourself to pause for a moment, not to think, not to analyze, just to breathe and feel what has quietly settled within you. Buddhism teaches that true understanding does not arrive loudly. It arrives softly when the mind stops resisting and the heart becomes still. Everything you have heard was not meant to add something new to you. It was meant to help you release what was never meant to stay. Not everyone needs a seat in your life, and realizing this is not a loss. It is clarity. You were never meant to carry every relationship, every expectation, and every emotional weight with you forever. Life moves in seasons, and so do people. When you stop forcing connection, approval, and belonging, peace naturally returns to the space you create. You have learned that attachment is not love, but fear wearing a mask. You have seen that some people were lessons, not lifelong companions. You have felt the truth that your energy is sacred, that distance can be compassionate, and that you do not need to be understood by everyone to live truthfully. You have discovered that letting go creates space, that solitude is not loneliness, that releasing without anger frees the heart, and that inner stillness removes the power others once had over you. You have remembered that you do not need permission to be at peace. All of this leads to one quiet realization. Peace does not come from fixing the world. It comes from no longer fighting yourself. When you stop abandoning your inner truth to keep others comfortable, life becomes simpler, lighter, more honest. You stop chasing belonging and start honoring alignment. You stop explaining and start living. You stop reacting and start resting in awareness. Buddhism teaches that freedom is not an escape from life, but a change in how you relate to it. You can still care deeply without clinging. You can still love without attachment. You can still walk away without anger. You can still be alone without being lonely. This is not emotional withdrawal. This is emotional maturity. From this place, you move differently. Your words become fewer, but more meaningful. Your boundaries become quieter, but stronger. Your presence becomes steady. You no longer fear who leaves your life because you trust yourself enough to remain whole. You no longer fill silence with noise because silence has become your refuge. Let life come and go. Let people arrive and depart. Let moments rise and fall. You do not need to hold everything to be complete. The more you loosen your grip, the more gently life flows through you. If there is one truth to carry forward, let it be this. Peace was never missing. It was waiting for space. And now, You know how to create that space. Sit with this stillness, let it settle, let it guide you quietly. You are not losing anything. You are returning to yourself.